Part F, Module 2 of the study on astronomy. We are looking now at the connection between the planisphere, the Mazzaroth, and the course of Abijah. This is in order to establish an evidence of the birth of John the Baptist and the birth of Messiah. There are more evidence that can be found in the video that we submit on the birth of Messiah at the Feast of Tabernacles, which you can look at it on the link that we have submitted here. We will concentrate on these slides on the study of the course of Abijah, which does offer a very, very important evidence of when Messiah was born in the light of the birth of John the Baptist. Luke chapter 1 verse 5 we read, "There was in the days of Herod, the king of Judea, a certain priest named Zacharias of the course of Abijah." This is a very, very important detail which will help us to establish a very, very grounded evidence on the birth of John the Baptist and the birth of Messiah. We will look now at 1 Chronicles chapter 24. 1 Chronicles chapter 24 is the division of the priesthood, the high priesthood, which David did before establishing through his son the sanctuary in Jerusalem. And as David was looking at the priesthood, the high priesthood of the son of Aaron, of the descendant of Eleazar and Ithamar, because Aaron had 4 sons, but 2 of them, Nadab and Abihu, died before their father and had no children, according to verse 2 of chapter 24 of 1 Chronicles, and we know their story. David then counted the number of descendants of Eleazar and Ithamar to find out that they were both distributed between Zadok and Abimelech. And we're told here that the descendants of Eleazar were 16, according to verse 4, and the descendant of Ithamar were 8, for a total of 24. So David then proceeded in dividing them by lot and came up with 24 divisions. In order to find those divisions, I invite you to read them for yourself. We have presented them here on this graphic to make it simpler. You will find out that there were 24 courses, but we only have 12 months to work with when we're talking specifically with the common year again here for the biblical month. So therefore, you will have 2 courses per month. So follow carefully. You can find these names. We start with chapter, again, 24, 1 Chronicles 24, and you have to start with verse 7 in order to read those courses according to the chief man of the descendant of both Eleazar and Ithamar. We will spare you those names. You can read them for yourself, except we would like to attract your attention to June and July Gregorian reckoning. So we have March, April, which would be the first month, as we saw from the planisphere in the Mazzaroth, Scorpio, Aquarius. And we have now, we go to the 4th month from this direction, June, July, and we come to Akaz and Abijah. And Abijah is the 8th course. Abijah actually means 8. This is the one we're interested in. This is the evidence that we have been offered in Luke chapter 1, verse 5. Meaning that having 24 courses, having 12 months, there were 2 courses per month that would come and served in Jerusalem at the temple. And we're told that Zechariah was of the course of Abijah. As we look now further into this, we also read the story in Luke chapter 1, how Elizabeth was promised to the angel. The angel promised Zechariah that his wife was going to conceive in her old age. And as they returned home, this happened, as it's explained in chapter 1, verse 24. After those days, his wife Elizabeth conceived and hid herself 5 months afterwards. And that would have been, by the time they came back home, we can simply say that it would have been July, August, Gregorian reckoning. And we have explained how the biblical month functions because of the new moon. It's not always the month always correspond to the Gregorian reckoning as the first of the month. It could be any time during that month. So therefore, the way we calculate the biblical months in order to convert with the Gregorian reckoning is always a double month for that purpose. So as we look at the time that she have conceived, which would have been more like in the month of July, August, and if you want to calculate it, the best way is to put it on your finger. This is the way I find simpler. So you will see here on the graphic, we are showing when John the Baptist, John's birth, follow carefully the column, where he would have been conceived. As we said, Abijah corresponds to June, July. So if it would have been around July, August, then you would have the first month around that time. So July, August, all the way to the 9th month when the child is conceived would have brought you to the first biblical month, the 9th, when the child was born, the 9th month would have been at Passover, March, April, Gregorian reckoning. So you can calculate it. It's quite simple. So you go July, August, August, September, September, October, October, November, November, December, December, January, January, February, February, March, and March, April. That's how we do it. So this would be when John the Baptist would have been born. And of course, we can continue here again. There is another evidence in Luke chapter 1, verse 36. The angel Gabriel appears to Mary to announce that she was going to conceive a child, and that child will be Messiah. So as he was talking to Mary, he also told her in Luke chapter 1, verse 36, we read, "Behold, thy cousin Elizabeth, she has also conceived a son in her old age, and this is the 6th month with her, who was called barren." So the 6 months. So by the time that Mary conceives, we see her that she arose in those days and she went to the hill country in a city of Judah, and went to meet with her cousin Elizabeth. They were a family. And when Elizabeth, we read in verse 41, heard the salutation of Mary, the babe leaped in her womb, and Elizabeth was filled with the Holy Ghost. So Mary had conceived by then, and when she came to visit her cousin, that would have been, as it shows in our graphic here again, look at the 6th month of John's conception. That would have been December, January, or Leo, Ariel. And we come into Mary's visit where she would have conceived, and that would be her first month. Again, because the Gregorian reckoning differs from the biblical months, composed of always double months, depending when the new moon appears. We start here again with January, but it could be December, January, January, February. And yet we believe that it is definitely easy to calculate when you go that route. So we're going to go January, January, February, February, March, March, April, April, May, May, June, June, July, July, August, August, September, and September, October, as we show on our graphic, would have been the 9th month of the Messiah being conceived and born, which will bring us to September, October, which is the time of the Feast of Tabernacles. And in the Jewish economy, it has been actually believed that Christ, the light, would have been born at the first day of Tabernacle. So therefore, we conclude that John the Baptist was conceived in July, August, Gregorian reckoning corresponding to Dagim or Pisces, in the Mazzaroth, which brings us to the 9th month in March, April at Aquarius or Scorpio, and this would be the first biblical month of the biblical year, where Jesus would have been conceived in January, February, and we will bring it up to, when we calculate it carefully, we bring it up to the 9th month, corresponding to September, October, at the Feast of Tabernacles, which will make a lot of sense as we study further the biblical calendar, which is based on the book of Leviticus, chapter 23, and the feast, the biblical feast of Leviticus 23. And this is a perfect application of the appointed time and Messiah and John the Baptist being both born at the John the Baptist Spring Feast and Messiah Fall Feast. In part A of Module 2, we saw in Genesis chapter 1, verses 14 to 19, the universal laws of the biblical calendar enunciated based on the sun, the moon, and the stars. We also saw the planisphere and the wonderful Mazzaroth, which guides us towards some new light, some new truth that has been hidden away and now are open for our understanding. In part G, we are looking at the biblical calendar restoration movement. Worship him that made heaven and earth. A brief history of the biblical calendar, the Creator's worship time, is found in the Grace Amadon collection, Crucifixion Date, Part 5. These are excerpts. The original Hebrew calendar in organized Israel was founded upon both forms of year. Its months were determined by the course of the moon, while the lunar year, 354 days and decimals, paced along with the sun's motion of 365 days and decimals by means of the harvest festivals. Thus, during the Old Testament time till the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD, the biblical calendar and the festivals of Leviticus 23, including the 70 Sabbaths, were dependent upon the course of the moon, the horn crescent to start the month, and upon the influence of the sun on the harvest, the barley more specifically. Every 2 or 3 years, the solar year exceeded the lunar by about a month, and the month was inserted. And that was done naturally by the moon, actually, and it is still to this day, making a leap year of 13 months, also called an embollismic year. We have here an image of the biblical calendar composed of 7 days, the first day of the month always being the new moon, and in Hebrew, new moon or moon and month are the same word, Kodesh or Odesh. The first working week would start with the 2nd of the month, being the first day of the working week, and will finish with the 7th day on the 8th of the month. The second week would start on the 9th and finish with the 15th. The 16th, which is the third week, would be up to the 22nd, and the 23rd, which would compose the whole week again, the fourth week, finishing with the 29th. The 30th day is also determined by the moon. Depending how far she is from the earth or how close it is from the earth, this is determined by actually astronomical and mathematical data, which are possible to find when you visit USNO or a Majesty Observatory. The biblical calendar, therefore, is composed from the barley harvest as a season, the lunisolar cycles, the new moon horned crescent, the stars, the new moon always making the first day of the month, and the 70 Sabbaths always being on the 8th, 15, 22nd, and 29. The moon phases act like witnesses as the horned crescent starts the new month. The first quarter will occur during the first week of the month, close to the Sabbath, like an announcement to the Sabbath, but not on the Sabbath day. The full moon is also found in the second week of the month, just before the Sabbath. And then the last quarter would be the third week to finish with the conjunction on the fourth week, and the cycle will start again. Again, as we mentioned, there are 29 days in a month, but sometimes because the moon is closer or further from the earth, you can add a 30-day. And that 30-day can be kept in between the Sabbath and the new moon as an additional day of being with God and taking time to study. And we can do some secular work on that day. However, some people choose to take it as what you could call a long weekend. There has been some changes in the biblical calendar to today, and it has become more or less the Lucifer worship time rather than the Creator's worship time. And this is also found in the Grace Abaddon Collection, Crucifixion Date Part 5, where we read that under the Roman decree of Nicaea in AD 325, barley harvest was replaced by the spring equinox, which makes quite a bit of a difference in the reckoning of the biblical calendar. We're told that from the time of the Nicene decree until the present day, it has been passed on from generation to generation that the Hebrew Passover was at the first full moon after the equinox of spring. The tables of the modern Jewish calendar follow this plan. Many historians, both ancient and modern, have taken it for granted that the Hebrews had always kept their Passover at this time, and that such was therefore the case in the days of Christ. But it was not so. We encourage you to visit the Biblical Calendar Restoration website, biblicalcalendarmovement.org, and encourage you to help us restore the true biblical calendar by sharing this website with as many people as you can and on social media. In Module 1, we learned that astronomy is an applied science, and it declares the glory and infinity of God. Astronomy teaches the celestial objects such as sun, planets, moon, stars, galaxies, comets, and meteors. However, in Module 2, we learned that astronomy is the science of time, the Creator worship time. The sun, the moon, the stars, and the planets and their cycles are the clock of the sphere the Creator made in order to reckon His biblical calendar as enunciated through the universal laws found in the book of Leviticus, chapter 23, and the book of Numbers, chapter 28 and 29. Thus, Part H, Module 2, is the sanctuary calendar for April and October 2020 Gregorian reckoning, and the first and seventh biblical months shown together based on the method restored by the Millerites in 1844, and as mentioned according to the book of Leviticus chapter 23 and the book of Numbers chapters 28 and 29. In order to understand how we came up with these data, you need to understand and read the Grace Abaddon collection, which we present here, the 6-part series, as well as visiting our library at 144,000teachers.org, where you will find the biblical calendar for the years 2020 to 2030, as well as some wonderful videos, one of them being Standing on Trial for You Believe, the biblical calendar, and See how you understand it following this video, and this will increase your knowledge if you do not have any. And the second one we encourage you to read, to study, is the Breaking the Code of the Biblical Calendar, which has allowed us to do these calendar as shown here of April 2020 and October 2020, as well as all the years following up to 2030. So we do encourage you to study for yourself. It's not one little slide here that will be able to present to you the knowledge that has been hidden away in the sun, the moon, the stars, and the planet. And they're not just to be looked at and admired. They reveal a wonderful secret, as you saw, with the planisphere, the Mazzaroth, and bringing us all the way to Revelation chapter 12. Continuing with the sanctuary calendar and part I of module 2, we present the months of May to October 2020 Gregorian reckoning along with the biblical months. And again, our method is based on the method restored by the Millerites in 1844 and according to the book of Leviticus chapter 23 and the book of Numbers chapters 28 and 29. In part J of the sanctuary calendar from module 2, to whet your appetite on wanting to study more of the biblical calendar, we show here the months of April and October 2030, which are the first and the seventh biblical months. And again, it's based on the method restored by the Millerite in 1844 and according to the book of Leviticus chapter 23 and Numbers chapters 28 and 29. And though to you it may seem like a very, very difficult way to understand the biblical calendar, it is actually quite simple. It's complex, but not complicated. We recommend definitely that you start studying the Grace Amadon collection, as again presented here, and the other links we offered in the slides presenting all of the material that you can find in order to understand these calculations. Part K, Module 2, the only calendar which meets the rules of evidence. Is it biblical, astronomical, chronological, and historical? Is the calendar of the sanctuary. From the library at 144,000teachers.org, again, you will find the biblical calendar for the years 2020 to the years 2030, which is the lunisolar barley harvest calendar, always presented versus the solar Gregorian calendar reckoning. Again, the videos that we encourage you to peruse are biblical calendar on trial, showing again the evidence that it meets all of the biblical, astronomical, chronological, historical, and even spirit of prophecy evidence. The other one is Breaking the Code, which is a computation mathematically and with the astronomy, the science of astronomy, on how to calculate the biblical calendar. Another important study is the Synchronism and Chronology of the Bible. And it's a study that is based on the change of calendar that we are told in the great controversy between Christ and Satan in Daniel 7:25. It will be a fight for worship. And this is demonstrated through Synchronism and Chronology of the Bible. Another video you will not want to miss, again, is Christ was born at the Feast of Tabernacles, not on December 25th. And of course, the wonderful study of the Mazzaroth and the woman of Revelation chapter 12, verse 1, with the 12 constellations in their season, the gospel in the stars. Make sure to study also the biblical lunisolar barley harvest calendar Under the Millerite movement, the 10th day of the 7th month, the Day of Atonement, as presented through the Grace Abaddon collection, parts 1 to 6. And this is actually the study of the Millerite, and now they actually revive and restored by the grace of God the true biblical calendar. Part L of Module 2 is an invitation to answer the call offered in Isaiah chapter 58, verse 12. And they that shall be of thee shall build the old waste places. Thou shalt raise up the foundations of many generations, and thou shalt be called the repairer of the breach, the restorer of paths to dwell in. Who we are. This movement is sponsored by Christian biblical calendar adherents who have studied and practiced the holy convocations of Leviticus 23 for more than 30 years based on the Millerite movement and the Great Day of Atonement of October 22nd, 1844. The Bible, astronomy, chronology, and history, along with the Spirit of Prophecy and the Grace Abaddon collection, have been our sources of inspiration and guidance. Join us by helping us to restore the true biblical calendar by sharing this website with as many people as you can and on social media. And do not forget the plan for 2020 to 2030 is to expand this restoration mighty movement to make known the Creator's worship time through His calendar. And it is to counteract the false present-day calendar reform movement by teaching the Creator's calendar and to participate in our symposium, conference calls, workshops, and seminars. Contact us for a schedule of events or further information at biblicalcalendarmovement@gmail.com. We even offer to you the phone number for Canada and the USA, and the same number can be used for WhatsApp for international phone calls. Remember, we are to educate, 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 and agitate, agitate, agitate. This should be our focus at this time, restoring the worship time of our Creator. Nothing else should attract our attention. This is the true Creator worship time through His calendar, the calendar of the sanctuary. Revelation 14, verses 7 and 8 is our guideline. This is our teaching at this time of earth history. And I saw another angel fly in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel, to preach unto them that dwell on the earth, and to every nation, and kindred, and tongue, and people, saying with a loud voice, Fear God, and give glory to Him, for the hour of His judgment is come, and worship Him that made heaven and earth, and the sea, and the fountains of waters. This is the call for Laodicea to wake up, the seventh church, the final church that is to accomplish a mighty work upon the earth, a mighty movement. This study was prepared for Generation 144K by www.144,000teachers.org.